Greetings everyone. I'm delighted to extend a warm welcome to all of you on the first stop of the FAIR National Roadshow series organized by FAIR Impact. Today's event, hosted virtually by the University of Maribor Library in collaboration with the Slovenian Open Science Community and ARNES, will dig into some realm of open science practices within our country and abroad as well. We'll begin with the overview of the FAIR policy regulations in Slovenia, explore ongoing activities, and assess the challenges still confronting the Slovenian research community. As some of us know, the University of Maribor Library has been the forefront of open science for several years now. They have organized top-tier summer schools for researchers, and they played an important role behind the formation of the Slovenian Open Science Community, which was established just last year and has already embarked on its mission. On the other hand, ARNES, as mandated organization within the European Open Science Cloud, plays a pivotal role in maintaining educational and research infrastructure in Slovenia. As the National Research and Education Network, we oversee everything from fiber optics to machine learning clusters and cloud services. With that brief introduction, it's time to move on the program for today's event. Our presentations from the FAIR Impact partners will highlight existing recommendations, best practices, and assessment tools that can aid members of the research community in either starting or advancing their journey towards greater FAIR compliance. Furthermore, they will actively contribute to European Open Science Cloud. At the same time, just before the first presentation, I would like to involve you to be part of this event by posting questions in the Q&A and just to be part of the discussion of the end. The agenda can be found on the link that you received with your invitation, I believe that it's right time to start with the whole thing. So now, to set the stage for today's discussion, we will begin with a warm welcome and the overview of the events context by Ingrid Dilo from DANCE.
Thank you very much, Marco, for your kind introduction, and good morning, everyone. I as well am very excited that we kick off this new roadshow series today in Slovenia, the roadshow series of the FAIR Impact project. And I want to start this event by talking a little bit about the context and of this project. Can I have the next slide, Rita? So the FAIR Impact project is a EU-funded project. It has a budget of 10 million and runs for 3 years. And we are now more or less halfway down that road of 3 years. And we work together with 28 partners in this project from all over Europe. As you can see on this slide, FAIR Impact focuses on the implementation of FAIR enabling practices, tools, and services. So I think that focus on the implementation of FAIR fits really very nicely with the overall focus of today's events, which is the status of open science policies practices. Because I think that FAIR research outputs are a very important paramount building block of open science. Can you go one back, Rita? I just said that the project is all about the implementation of FAIR practices. And this project really is a continuation of an earlier project called FAIR's FAIR, which was quite successful. So we are able to continue some nice elements from that project. But what we try to do in this one is really to take FAIR practices from one scientific domain to another, and also to not only look at FAIR data, but also explicitly look at other research outputs, like, for example, semantic artifacts or software. And we try to support implementation on different levels. Next slide. So that is our overall objective. So how do we do that? First of all, we really try to engage with a wide range of stakeholders, researchers, but also a lot of stakeholders that need to enable researchers to use FAIR practices. So research performing institutions, repositories, policymakers, etc. And all of that is meant to also to optimize the alignment in the practices. we explicitly try to find, together with domain-specific partners with knowledge in their own domain, to identify solutions and take those solutions and try to adapt them to make them also implementable in other domains. So we try to do that translation for fair solutions around data, but also, like I said earlier, other research outputs. And what we also try to do is define a certain support and governance and coordination mechanisms that will also help us to make sure that those fair solutions will continue within the context of the European Open Science Cloud in the future. Next slide. And why is that important? Here, I want to show you two graphs. Here you see a graph from a survey that was run, commissioned by the EC last year. 15,000 European researchers were asked about their FAIR awareness. And if you look at this, this graph, you will see that about 2/3 of the researchers say that they have some level of familiarity with the FAIR principles. There is still 1 out of 3 that have never heard of them. And less than 1 out of 5 researchers also puts those FAIR principles into practice. Now, you could argue that it's not that important that a European researcher knows what the acronym FAIR means. But what is important is that they apply practices that make their work and the data fair. Can I have the next slide? So here you see a number of these FAIR-aligned practices. And you can see that also there we still have a world to win. For example, when researchers are asked whether they release their data sets with a license, you can see that 40% say they have never done that. When they were asked whether they acquire persistent identifiers for their data, the answer was more or less the same. So this shows that we still have a lot to do in Europe. Now, of course, as you will hear in the course of this day's event, not all the solutions that we hope to produce in this project are directly focused at researchers, at the researchers themselves. But very often they are focused on repositories or research performing organizations. But these solutions help them, in their turn, to enable fair practices of their, in the case of repositories, their depositors and their users. And for research performing organizations, it's the same. If they implement those solutions, hopefully they can support their researchers better in being fair. Next slide. So here you see an overview of the work packages in this project. You can see that we have 3 pillars around persistent identifiers. We do work around metadata and ontologies, which we capture in the overall generic term semantic artifacts. And we do work on metric certification and guidelines. These 3 topics will also be highlighted today, and you will hear which kind of contributions we hope to produce within this project in those different themes. Topics. But also very important is our work package 2, which focuses on adoption and implementation. Next slide. Here you see the expected results, the most important ones from the project. I'm not going to walk you through all of them. We don't have the time, but you can maybe have a look afterward if you're interested, because I imagine that the slides will be available. Next one. What I do want to focus on is a little bit the method that we developed to support adoption. And we focus on 4 different levels. Very important is the fact that we have 4 domain-specific partners in the project with whom we really try to develop solutions and also make sure that we take solution in domain X and adapt it to be implementable in domain Y. We do that with the social sciences and humanities, with the photon and neutron sciences, life sciences, and the agri-food sector. So that is really a big investment in transporting solutions from one domain to the other. Next slide. But we also cast our net wider through different support activities. We have a whole program with different tiers. You see them here on the right-hand side. Tier 1 were the integrated use cases I just talked about with those 4 domains. But on top of that, we have 3 other support routes. We provide in-kind support through open calls, so people can, from outside of the project, can be supported in their implementation and adoption of FAIR solutions. We also offer cascading grants, so some incentive funding to support the testing and implementing of certain tools and approaches. And we organize a series of public FAIR implementation workshops that are open for everyone. In total, the project will have 5 open calls for support. We already launched 2, and 1 is open at the moment, and next year another 3 will follow. And I know that my colleague Joy will talk a little bit more about this at the end of this event. Next slide. But I already mentioned now that we have a second call open for in-kind support, and we have 3 tracks in that one. There is support for research performing organizations, for repositories, and for national level initiatives as well. Go to the website. The call is open until the 1st of November, and have a look whether this could be interesting for your organization. And then I think I have one final slide. There it is, with a little bit of information around our synchronization force. This is an activity in the project in which we try to align the work that we do in the project with our, let's say, FAIR and EOSC environment. So in these workshops, we invite other projects, other initiatives in the area to align our work, to learn from each other, and to see where we can collaborate. And a next series of workshops that we organize with this synchronization force will start on the 2nd of November and run until the 8th of February next year. More information also to be found on our website. And I think I'll stop here, because usually a project overview is not the most exciting thing in an event like this. And I wish you a very nice couple of hours. Thank you very much.
Perfect. Thank you, Ingrid. And at the same time, I would like to kindly involve or ask attendees to post any question in the Q&A. So because this would be an amazing opportunity to have an amazing discussion at the end of today's event. At the same time, next we will have the privilege of hearing from Ivan Skubic of the Ministry of Higher Education, Science and Innovation, as he delves into the landscape of open science in Slovenia, focusing on Scientific Research and Innovation Activities Act.
Thank you very much, Marco, and good morning to everyone. Thank you to the organizers as well to invite me to present Open Science in Slovenia, the Scientific Research and Innovation Activities Act. I'm not sure whether you already could see this presentation. Could you just
We can see, Ivan.
Okay, presentation mode. Okay, very well. Thank you very much. So, but before I just go to that, I would just like to shortly introduce you into publicly funded research capacities in Slovenia, where we have 4 universities, about 5,000 researchers altogether, 47 libraries, 19 research institutes comprising of about 2,000 researchers, 16 libraries. Then we have 2 support public institutes, Library and Research Information System Institute, and Academic and Research Network Institute, ARNES. Then last but not least, of course, there is a research funded organization, ARIS, and there are some other public funders. Occasionally, these are other ministries with dedicated funds for that. I will explain you at the very end how many of these organizations are already included in our quite a big project that is the aim to support them to adapt to operation according to the open science principles. And let me now go further, I would say there's only one open science, but there are different ways how it is transposed to the national level. And today I will present you how we bring open science in Slovenia. So legal and other policy framework for open science in Slovenia. I will just first like to mention Scientific Research Innovation Activities Act that came into force with the 1st of January last year. And then we have pre-linked documents, very important for open science as well. And this is the resolution of the Slovenian Scientific Research and Innovation Strategy till 2030. That was adopted by Slovenian Parliament last year as well. And then we have a piece of second level legislation issued by our government this year. This is a governmental decree on the implementation of scientific research work in accordance with the principles of open science, or shortly open science decree, or decree on open science. And then we have another very important piece of documentation that was adopted by our government end of May this year. This is Action Plan for Open Science. I got information that you will have these slides later on. So by checking this box, you could get the links to the text of these documents, and they're in English, but Slovenian ones are even more easier to be accessed. So just to go shortly to our Open Science in Scientific Research Innovation Activities Act. And there are many provisions indeed in this act, starting with that open science is part of the general principles of this act. And even in the Article 2, so principles, when we have, for example, autonomy of scientific research, or we have equal opportunities or ethics and so on, there is also stated the scientific research is based on the principles of open science, and explaining a little bit more in details. This is very important. Then we have also, when talking about founding, open science funds and financing, it is clearly stated in the Act. It is Article 12 and Article 16 that funds for scientific research and innovation activities are also dedicated to co-finance the implementation of open science measure. And besides that, open science is considered as part of a regular part of scientific research activity, and is therefore subject to stable financing. Though I could only say that this is something good, stable financing. So open science is indeed part of regular activities in science. And then we are now in the, I would say, core part of our open science, of our Research and Innovation Activity Act. This is Article 40 and 41 and 42, which is dealing solely with open science. And Article 4, first paragraph, is explaining us what is indeed meant by open science. Open access to research results. Later on, it will be explained what this is. It's not just research articles, but it's much more. Evaluation of the quality and impact of scientific research work using responsible metrics, and involvement of the interested public into the research process. So all these things are then later on dealt with more details. What is also important, that is Article 40 is also legal basis for the governmental decree on open science, and also a legal basis for open science action plan. It's also very important. I already mentioned you all these, both of these documents beforehand. Just to go shortly to open access to scientific publications and research data. In Article 41, there are some important provisions to that. So research co-financing the amount of at least 50% of funding. The funder provider shall request open access to all peer-reviewed scientific publications and research data and other research results. So here you could see that research results are scientific publications, research data, and other research results are, for example, software and so on. The provider of scientific research or researcher shall comply with the above obligation in the individual management of intellectual property rights by reserving the appropriate scope of rights. This is, of course, very important, and it is detailed in our decree in open science, so to say. In second paragraph, it says that the results of research co-financed from the public sources must be open and accessible, subject to any restrictions imposed by the protection of intellectual property, the protection of personal data, the security of persons, or the state. These are basically exceptions. So, it's of course not needed everything is open. There are cases that this is not to be the case. And of course, open research data must be published or otherwise accessible in a way that allows them to be findable, accessible, interoperable, and reusable, or simply to say to be fair. Evaluation of scientific research activities is another important part of our Research and Innovation Activities Act. The evaluation of and assessment of researchers, research organizations, research progress, and projects shall promote open science. So there's not a question whether or not. The Act is very clear. When we are evaluating and assessing research activities, we shall check also that open science practices are somehow involved. And how are they involved? Just to mention scientific journals and monographs of Slovenian publishers, where it is stated that scientific journals of publishers established in Slovenia, when they are fully financed, the digital versions need to be openly accessible. And then scientific monographs, when we have a dedicated contracts to be prepared and financed by public funds, the digital editions of these monographs need to be openly accessible. There are some other more detailed provisions. I think it's not time today for that. To go just quickly jump into resolution on the Slovenian scientific research innovation strategy, it also have a very important chapter on open science. There are 6 important provisions. I will only mention the third one, which is dealing with the FAIR, ensure that the results of scientific research are consistent with the FAIR, and that the full and immediate open access is provided, subject to justified exceptions, what we already said. And here we are now at the governmental decree on the implementation of scientific research work, and so on and so forth. So shortly, decree on open science. There are, I would say that it is extremely important that the decree is based on very concrete practical solutions that are offered by the Plan S when we are talking about scientific publications, and Horizon Europe provisions when we are talking about research data and other research outputs. There is only difference that Plan S is important because it only in the transitional period allows publication in hybrid journals when they are so subject to transformative agreements, so to say. There are different parts of, quite some parts of this decree on open science. I will only focus shortly to the third part. This is open access to research data and other research results in digital form. Here we have Article 4, and basically quite some provisions. I will only mention the main provisions, which is preparation and regular updating of research data management plan, management of research data and other research results in accordance with the FAIR principles that we are talking today about, and open access to research data and other research results in accordance with the principle as open as possible or as close as necessary, which is of course dealing with the exceptions that we already mentioned today. And what about the implementation? There are quite some details about implementation in the decree. I will only mention some main provisions, which is that research data and other research results shall be stored in repositories and made openly accessible through that repositories. as soon as possible after their creation. And research data and other research results supporting scientific publication shall be made openly accessible at the latest on publication of scientific publication in which a permanent access point identifier or persistent identifier that we will also talk today or shortly PID shall be cited. Research data and other research results shall be accompanied by the metadata, which is very much important. And when designing this metadata, researchers shall take into account the specifics of, scientific fields that were working. So, working in. Just to jump at the end on the action plan for open science, what we have here, we are covering the period from 2023 to 2030 with 16 activities. Among them, there are also activities that are supporting fair implementation in the country. There are 60.7 million euros allocated for that, and this is complemented. So in addition to that, we also have two quite big projects which are part of recovery and resilience facility funds in Slovenia. So there's a national program on that. And first big project is a Spoznaj project that supports Slovenian publicly funded research organization in adapting to open science. And 20 out of 23, those mentioned at my first slide, publicly funded research organizations, so almost 90% of them are members of this consortium, of this project. And then is additional, even bigger, financially bigger project. This is establishment of two separate data centers for long-term storage of research data that are governed by already mentioned public Institute Arnes. So this is more or less everything from my side. Thank you very much for the attention. And Marco, please hand over the microphone.
Perfect. Thank you, Ivan, so much for this presentation. As you can see, we have pretty strong legal framework related to open science in Slovenia. And moving on, we have Volmar Nyberg-Ackerström from Upsala University, Sweden, who will enlighten us with the findings from the EOSC Semantic Interoperability Task Force. So, Volmar, the floor is yours, or let's say the mic is yours.
Yes, thank you very much, and thank you for inviting our task force to present. I hope my slides are showing up fine as well. I see a thumb, but that's great. And I will start with a short introduction about what these task forces are and with what the context they operate in. So there is a non-profit organization called the EOSC Association in Europe that represents the stakeholders across different member organizations throughout the entirety of Europe. And that includes universities, national funders, and stakeholders that support research and infrastructures. This organization communicates with the European Commission and also organize these tripartite events where kind of the national perspectives, the European perspectives, and this kind of wider stakeholder community perspectives converge. So the collective goal is to achieve this or realize this web of fair data and services and create what is going to be EOSC and the strategic initiative towards the European research and innovation data space. The task force has identified a few key areas, and one of them is related to semantic interoperability. These key areas are supported by a few task forces that consist of people from across these member organizations and beyond that investigate some interesting solutions and develop recommendations for EOSC. The people who are part of the task forces are usually also part of research performing organizations and part of the projects that are implementing the different aspects of EOSC. So it's a good forum for people to meet from different perspectives, have discussions on these specific topics, and also for people who are not specifically in these task forces to reach out to these groups and pitch the work that they are doing in a project, or to give some input on or get some input on recommendations that might not have been published yet. So for the Semantic Interoperability Task Force, we have focused on developing recommendations that already are in place and making them more specific and tangible. So there's this EOSC Interoperability Framework document that outlines the direction or recommendations on how to proceed to develop an actual framework or structure for organizing interoperability in EOSC, and that contains a section about semantic interoperability, which was our starting point. To give some background on what semantic interoperability means in practice, it's basically a way of making sure that the data that you are uploading, the physical files, and those could be spreadsheets, are linked to more general concepts that can map across disciplines, or only to make sense of data within a discipline as well. So if you have a spreadsheet, you could link that to explanational models that give information about what the different columns represent, but then also how these concepts interconnect and have relationships among themselves. And this can be used then to translate and exchange information across different types of information systems and make sure that the data itself has the prerequisites for being kind of interoperable across a wide range of different types of services. So having this interconnected web of FAIR data and services is the end goal, and working on solutions towards semantic interoperability is part of that solution. We are, as I mentioned, representatives of many research infrastructures and institutes that kind of are building this EOSC ecosystem. But I like this phrase. I don't remember who I borrowed it from, but we are EOSC, and that goes for you as researchers and for the wider community as a whole. So it's not something that's being built by others. You are also building and working towards this. And you should make your voice heard to shape EOSC into something that is useful to you and your organization. There is a roadmap that this EOSC Association has put forward, which is part of the Strategic Research and Innovation Agenda. And that contains some guidance on practices and skills, standards, tools and services, and federated infrastructure. And these are organized under at different levels. So some people at the EU level should do things, then you have people at the institutional and other national levels that you should try to support activities towards getting a semantic interoperable and also other kinds of components in place. So on the EU level, currently this is an example of something that relates to semantic interoperability. They should invest in the creation, adoption, and governance of community-based metadata and standards. And then on the national level, we have examples of just highlighting the existence and prevalence of semantic artifact catalogs, which is a way of sharing standards and vocabularies. And then on the institutional level, there should be support for creating semantic artifacts or these different kinds of scientific vocabularies and making sure that they are shared and accessible to the people then using the data that was produced based on these vocabularies. And this is necessary because when you're working with data and you can make data fair for your own purposes, that is it's an easier process because you will have already installed all the software you need. You will also have the context you need to understand the data. So the amount of information you need to collect to make something fair for your research group is pretty minimal. But the data should be readable for machines without the need of specialized or ad hoc algorithms, translators, or mappings. And this is a bit subjective on the easy to implement if you're working within a single group. If you're working with another group's data, then you would need this context to be more explicit. And you should aim to make sure that your data is accessible to someone else so that they can make an informed judgment call about the reliability of the data and also the competence of those who created it. So it's a lot of contextual information that needs to be there to really make it reusable. And the data standards, if you look at the European perspective and across all the disciplines, there's tons of different data formats, there's many different terminologies, and there's also a lot of guidelines. And these numbers are taken from the Fair Sharing Registry, which contains a lot of these standards. So you might need to search and find ways of translating across of these to really make interoperability work on the larger scale, and especially in cross-disciplinary projects. The final goal is to create this kind of web of fair data and services. And there are many projects that have worked towards identifying these kind of research and knowledge graphs like structures, where basically each node in this picture is a representation of some sort of research artifact or research data set. And you could imagine that there is metadata connected to that describes how it's connected to people, other documentation, and you need a way to navigate this using tools that are adapted to the cross-disciplinary cases, but also the disciplinary cases. And one example of a project working on this is the FairCore for EOS project. Then there are other solutions working on saving documentation together with the data files themselves. And an example is the Research Object Crate, or RO Crate for short. And some work that's going on in this direction is also done in the EOSC Association task forces, where we've done some explorations of different components of this semantic interoperability framework that we're envisioning. So that's the context. And our work is organized based on a charter that was released, I think, 2 years ago or something like that now. We have over 40 members active to various degrees, and we're working together in different explorations and publishing conference contributions, organizing workshops, and having discussions on what would be useful solutions for EOSC. Currently, we are in a phase where we're trying to transition these activities into a set of recommendations that are going to be published sometime at the end of the year. So they are not done yet, but we have results across 3 different teams, working with metadata conventions and kind of a landscaping survey, semantic artifact catalogs, and defining, how you put a vocabulary and make it searchable in a catalog, some kind of maturity analysis of those. And then we're working with use cases, and we have a template for collecting case studies and use cases for interoperability purposes. So the semantic interoperability landscape, there's currently a published paper, conference paper, and an open survey going on. And you can, if you want to contribute to this, contact the coordinator, Kurt Baumann. In full, we have interoperability recommendations, an inventory of tools for interoperability and long-term sustainability. And we also have Milan here, who's our next presenter and also part of the Slovenian research community. And then for the theme 2, semantic artifact catalogs, we're asking 2 basic questions. What is a semantic artifact catalog, and which dimensions indicate if it's mature or not? And then there's a paper elaborating on this that you can review. And you have 3 coordinators for this team as well. And if you take a look at the slides afterwards, you can contact them. For the use cases and case studies, we have designed a method to capture these case studies and then given some ideas on how to index and organize them so you could reuse them for people or projects building EOSC. And then also making sure that we try to represent a full picture of the EOSC community. We're not really there. We still need more people to contribute their use cases or show where there are good collections of use cases representing different aspects of research and interoperability. So if you would like to contribute to this, you can contact me, and my email address is here. So with that, I would just invite you to contact us, give us some suggestions on things we should look into, and bring into light to the people who are part of this task force. If you want to know more about our activities, there are some chances at upcoming events to interact with us. The EOSC Symposium has ended, but the recordings will be public in 3 weeks, I've been told. So if you visit the event website, you will be able to see the presentations that we've given together with some collaborators in EOSC projects. We're also going to be at a cross-domain interoperability workshop in Germany next week, and then we have the International Data Week coming up at the end of the month. And we're going to have some presentations, but also a poster there. So please take the opportunity to reach out. And with that, I would like to say thanks a lot and leave the word to the next speaker.
Thanks, Volmer. Thank you for this interesting presentation. At the same time, I would like to involve attendees to write questions directly in the Q&A, as we saw some raised hands, just to have a great discussion after all panelists finish with their presentation. So as Volmer said, the next presenter is Milan Osterschek, and our journey continues with Milan Osterschek, as I said, from the University of Maribor, who will guide us through the landscape of persistent identifiers for digital objects and their importance for the national repositories.
I have problems with sharing because someone disabled my screen sharing. Please, if you enable.
Can you try again now, Milan?
Please try. Now host disabled participant screen sharing.
Just give us a second, we'll try to fix this.
Yes. Give me a second.
Is disabled.
What about now?
Ah,
Is working now?
yes, it's working.
Oh, good news. Go ahead.
I'm Milan Osterschek. I lead development of our national open access infrastructure. This is not, how I say, only work of our group from Laboratory for Heterogeneous Computer Systems, which I lead, but there is involved a lot of people from universities, from our agency of research, from our Ministry of Higher Education, at the University Library of Maribor, for example, from our academic research network. So I will present work which it possible to do only with our organization, and I hope we have done a lot, and we will work also further on this direction. First, I will show our open access, open science infrastructure. It consists of 6 repositories from University of Ljubljana, University of Maribor, University of Primorska, University of Nova Gorica. Then we have a repository for standalone research organizations and a repository for standalone higher education and colleges organizations, but also we have 2 smaller universities, Nova Univerza and Univerza of Novo Mesto, University of Novo Mesto. And also we aggregate data from other digital archives, like, for example, Clarin.si for natural language processing, software datasets, guidelines, etc., from our social science data archive, from our digital library of Slovenia, from our national library, from videolectures.net, from our digital library of Ministry of Defense, from publishers which have established open source tools for publishing journals and monographs, and also some other domain-specific repositories. We work also in aggregation of our public administration data sets and software. But we aggregate only metadata from other sources. And national portal aggregates this in the database, and also it serves as a search engine and recommender system, and also for similar content detection. Also, in national portal is possible to find duplicated digital objects, and national portal is connected with our PID service. Every digital object from repositories receive PID, national PID. Also, we have a big research data archive. Also, every big research data set is stored into this big research data archive, and this big research data archive is connected to our supercomputer network, SLINK. And also we have built some other common services. And also our national portal is a source for Slovenian COVID-19 data portal and source for European COVID-19 data portal. And on this picture, you can see a structure of our repository. We use for authentication AI from our academic research network, but also we enable to every repository also their own connection with their own institutional authentication system. Also, repositories are connected with institutional information systems, and also important is that repositories use metadata from COBISS and send metadata to COBISS.si. This is our national bibliographic information system, and we send some data also to our current national current research information system. Important is also that we use metadata from Crossref and DataCite, and also other sources like OpenAir, BitoFind, Dartzero, Google Dataset Searched, and other resources has possibilities to harvest our metadata. And also we have APIs. These APIs is used for mobile applications, and also these APIs is used for publication of some metadata in institutional web servers and to social networks. Also, we have connections with open access analytics called dCOBISS. Our repositories send some metadata to this open access analytics. This open access analytics serves for how I say, for monitoring how much resources is available in open access, and also how much application, this article processing charge and dataset processing charges are paid. Also, we have connection with our digital preservation archive, and also we have connection with our HPC infrastructure. We try also to establish connection to EODAT. And what is the most important? The most important are processes. And on the beginning in 2012, we have established processes for submission of final study works or thesis, for example, diploma, master, and PhD thesis to our national infrastructure, and this is one sequence diagram. In this sequence diagram, you can see that also we detect similarity of documents, and on the end, also a system is used for cataloging in our national bibliographic system. The same process we have established with for our researchers. Every researcher has possibilities to add their research results, papers, data sets, also PhD thesis or other theses, also software, etc. in our infrastructure. We work on establishing processes for supporting handling of research data. We have some pilots on this, how to implement these processes, but we need also some additional legal rules on the level of institutions and on the level of our agency of research. And this process consists from the phase before the publications of research data. You need first to researcher need to collect some ethical approvals, some informed consents, etc. And also researcher needs to prepare a data management plan, documentation, which is necessary for understanding and using the data. Also convert data files into appropriate format, etc. And this is phase before publication. In the publication phase, a researcher inserts a research data set into an infrastructure. The librarian checks adequacy of metadata and also send how I say a password to the institution. In the institution there are some how I say data access committee, and this data access committee also see if all is okay about metadata, about documentation, and after this body give green light, then librarian publish a data set, and after that a centralized specialized information center of the scientific field also check if all documentation and metadata are okay. And in the digital preservation phase, we work on the preservation of research data that will be independent of the technology, and we work this on this OIS reference model. There is one screenshot for recommendation system. You can see similar work when you click on the one item. You can see similar works from the same repository and similar works from other repositories. Also, we have built our plagiarism detection system, which is used in almost all academic institutions in Slovenia. And now I wish to also show something about what is fair digital object. Fair digital object consists of some binary files. For a description, you need metadata. You need rich metadata for description of, for example, of license, provenance. For findability, you need description metadata, title, authors, etc. And for this digital object, you need also the services, how to interface this digital object, and you need a persistent identifier. And also what is important is that this digital object is possible to aggregate into collection. And if we want to check if our digital object is not changed when we transfer to our system, for example, we need a checksum, and also important part is a type of digital object, because for different type we have different type of kernel metadata. And also important is that in this kernel metadata is metadata about provenance and about rights. And what is problems in our infrastructure? We have a lot of metadata records with one or more global or local identifiers. For example, COBIS.si, COBIS ID is used for our bibliography system. URN is used for our national library. Also, we have URL, we have digital object identifier, handle, etc. inside our metadata records. The same is for persons. We have Conor ID, which is used for determination of person in our bibliographic system. This IRRS ID is used in our current research information system. We have used also some institutional digital identity, etc. ORCID. The same problem is with unique identifiers. How we solve this problem? We store all digital identifiers which we have possible to collect about digital object, and also about persons and about organizations. There is one example of local and global identifiers from me and for one scientific purpose. We have add for this scientific purpose paper also our national PID, and there is example of these PIDs, and there is example of a PID from one data set. And we have established our own PID national service, which use this B2 handle from EODAT. We use for storing our files and metadata in the B2Safe service, and this B2Safe service is used for storing files into our HPC system and to our academic research network digital preservation archive. And also we use B2Stage software for transfer files and also metadata from HPC Vega to the Arnes Digital Preservation Archive and also to HPC. In the future, we will send also metadata and also files to the EODAT and to the EOSC and EuroHPC infrastructure, and also B2Find use our metadata, but also we will extend this. I have more slides, but I think it will be enough for this presentation. So thank you for your attention, and after I will finish, we will finish with presentations. Please ask me if you want to know something more. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you, Milan, for amazing presentation and the good and hard work behind it. And now let's turn on our attention to Sophie Albin from INRAE as a Fair Impact partner, who will shed light on Fair Impact's contribution to metadata and ontologies in research.
Good morning, I'm Sophie Aubin from INRAE France, and I will present you the activities of Fair Impact regarding semantic interoperability and ontologies. So we will talk about semantic interoperability, and I won't introduce the notion again, as Walmart did it well just a few minutes ago. So what are we talking about? We are talking about semantic artifacts that are controlled vocabularies that goes from very simple vocabularies like glossaries or list of controlled items to more formal vocabularies like ontologies that we can use to reason on data. We have to face a change in stakeholders using and producing semantic artifacts. They used to be librarian, knowledge engineer experts, and now we have a larger scope of stakeholders, and we have to support and guide them towards developing fair semantic artifacts. Just as a reminder, the second principle for interoperability is a recommendation to use fair semantic artifacts. So our first goal is to making semantic artifacts fair by design. And for this, we have to provide fair semantic producers guidelines for engineering semantic artifacts. We will rely on the fair implementation framework that we will feed with methodologies and tools for the semantic artifact developers. And we will also produce guidelines to create mappings between semantic artifacts, and I will develop this a little further. Mappings are correspondences or equivalencies between for instance, classes from 2 different ontologies. And this is useful as no non-semantic artifact fits for all. So different communities use different semantic artifacts, and to create interoperability between communities or information systems, we have to declare these correspondences. So what we need is more guidance, specifications for what mappings should be, and we will evolve and disseminate the common exchange model for mappings, which is SOSUM, and we contribute to this work, and we also intend to write a cookbook with practical guidelines showing different ways of doing mappings, and of course making them fair. We also have activities relating to the use, the storing or sharing of semantic artifacts. First is to have good and standardized metadata, and we will work on the MOD vocabulary, which is a decade-based standard for describing semantic artifacts, and the catalogs that host them. Together with this standard, a common API to share the semantic artifacts within EOSC is being developed. And to illustrate and evaluate these developments, we are developing use cases in different communities that will aim at demonstrating the impact of using controlled vocabularies for data repositories. In the field of governance, there are still many issues to be raised. For instance, where people have to be guiding in making their semantic artifacts accessible, and there are here some governance issue, and we will produce a report on governance. We are also working in collaboration from Work Package 4 and Work Package 5 on fairness assessment methodologies and tools, and we work on specific metrics for semantic artifacts. These metrics are being implemented in different fairness assessment tools. There are also developments to improve the description and of software and code, and to this goal, recommendations are being developed regarding the metadata that should be used to describe software, some guidelines regarding accessibility and preservation in cooperation with the Software Heritage repository. Also a recommendation for the identification and referencing of software code, and so on. This work is developed in collaboration with the CodeMeta project, where you can find the references and contact here. Just an information, we will soon have an event during the International Data Week and the Research Data Alliance plenary end of October, and we invite you to join this meeting to enrich the discussions. We also have further activities in the context of work package 6 on more general interoperability issues. First, we will develop guidelines regarding technical and semantic interoperability, but also there are still things to be done on the domain of legal interoperability, and to prepare the connection of the different European data spaces that will enter the EOSC. But doing this, we are not alone, and we work with the WordFed project and many others to drive these activities. So that's it for me. Thank you for listening.
Continues with Josephine Nordling from the Data Management Office at CSC, focusing on persistent identifiers.
Hello, everyone. Thank you very much, Marco. So indeed a pleasure to be here to present to you the work done within the Fair Impact project on persistent identifiers. Next slide, please. So first of all, a few words about why we work on PIDs and a little bit of what PIDs is. Milan already explained quite thoroughly about PIDs in his presentation, but I just wanted to have a quick sort of recap of what a PID is. You can say that it's a long-standing digital reference to an object. An object can be, for example, a digital or a physical representation. It could reference to a contributor or an organization, and it ultimately allows discoverability and accessibility. And as you might know, metadata is a key to FAIR principles, but so are PIDs. And the goal is to enable and support the sustainable implementation of PIDs across EOSC by working together with a range of different stakeholders in doing so. So mostly we reach out to PID service providers, to research infrastructures, but also to different scientific domains. And the ultimate goal is always to align with the work done within EOSC. So we follow really closely what is being done within the EOSC, and we follow the EOSC PID policy. We have the end user perspective in mind when we work towards these goals, and we promote best practices. Next slide, please. So this work has been divided into 4 tasks. We have one task focusing on setting up a coordination mechanism for EOSC PID service providers, and also writing a joint value proposition for EOSC PID service providers. This work is led by DataSite. We have a task working on integrating PID practices into FAIR data management, which is led by CSC. We have one task focusing on PID policy work and ensuring alignment and support there, coordinated by DUNS. And lastly, we have a task on PID implementation program led by SURF. Next slide, please. So as I said already, we coordinate some of the work together with the PID service providers within the IOSC. And one of the aims of our work on PIDs is to create a shared understanding and a PID value proposition among these PID service providers. The first step towards such a joint understanding has already been taken, where we are outlining alignment to the different roles as defined in the IOSC PID policy. We also included some paragraphs about the main pain points that PIDs can help solve, but also the benefits that PIDs provide for the IOSC users. And the very next in line, which will be a report published within a few weeks' time, I guess, is to propose establishment of PID coordination mechanism. And through this piece of work, the task has been able to already identify various needs for such a coordination mechanism, but also a set of requirements needed both for enabling an efficient coordination, but also the stakeholders that ideally can take this forward. And lastly, there has been a connection also made in terms of the coordination mechanism between IOSC and PID service providers. This work will align with the requirements for onboarding new PID service providers into IOSC, and we also pay some attention to emerging PIDs. Next slide, please. This is a piece of work that is done mainly with 8 different integrated use case partners from different scientific domains. So we have use case partners from social sciences, life sciences. We have agricultural, food sciences, environmental sciences, but we also have one domain agnostic partner focusing on research software. And here the main ambition is to identify and document best practices when managing workflows, when working with different types of data sets and research objects. And we, as I said already, we have the end user perspective in focus here. And the ultimate goal is to make the content transferable across scientific domains. And this way we can reach alignment in terms of PID minting and using practices. We all also are very focused on reaching out to external communities. So this is one way of doing that. We also arrange workshops of different kinds in doing that. So next slide, please. So this is the structure of the task working with the use case partners. We have 3 subtasks, as you can see in the middle. One is focused on PIDs in data production workflows. We have one on PIDs in complex data citation, and lastly, PIDs and sensitive data. If you could take the next slide, please. Maybe 2 more, so we get the descriptions for the 3 use cases. Thank you very much. So here you can see very briefly what the 3 use cases or the subtasks focus on. So we have the one on data production workflows, focuses on for example, documenting data provenance in processes. We have work done on PIDs for instruments, PIDs for software, etc. And you can see the partners involved in that piece of work. And then in the middle, you can see PIDs in complex data citation. So their work is mainly being done on defining the level of the versioning practices, mostly when minting PIDs, also when collections and hierarchies are involved, etc. And then the work on sensitive data. There the focus is, for example, on kernel metadata and related owner rights. And all of these use case partners, they also jointly focus on the cross-cutting themes that you can see in this picture below. For example, on reproducibility, on research object types, on granularity, versioning, etc. Next slide, please. Here you can see all the tools, the services, and the platforms that are involved in this work, and also the projects and communities that the use cases partners can leverage from and exploit synergies with. So there is quite a plethora of different resources here to be used. Next slide, please. So this task explores the available PID policies within EOSC. It analyzes these and provides guidelines for different stakeholders on creating EOSC-compliant PID policies. Here, the goal is to arrange in total 3 workshops, of which the next will be organized most likely as a virtual one towards the end of this year. It will be targeting mainly PID managers. And the idea is that this workshop will present and discuss criteria that PID managers can use to test the quality of their PID infrastructure. And so the criteria and related assessment and evaluation method are developed by our so-called sister project, FAIRcore for EOSC. Next slide, please. So we also have a PID implementation program that started from this summer on. It will offer support for applicants through the project's open calls. It will deliver a technical EOSC PID implementation guide towards the end. And also we have an interesting workshop coming up on the 21st of November. It's organized under the RDA's November theme. And the workshop will be focused on the practical side. It will guide the workshop participants in implementing best practices for PIDs, but also applying them to their own domain and work. Everyone is, of course, welcome to join this workshop. There is already an event page set up for this workshop, but the agenda will also be available soon. That was all for me. Thank you very much. And the questions, I believe, we take towards the end.
Yeah, that's right. Thank you for a beautiful and detailed presentation. And as I can see, Sophie is back with us and if you all agree, maybe we can give it a try right now. Sophie, if you can hear us.
Yes.
And
yes,
if you agree.
I can hear. Yes,
okay.
But I think that the problem is not solved at all. I could not find another connection.
I believe that you're right about it, because there was a delay.
I cannot connect
response.
from my. Yes. I think that we have to move to another. Yeah.
Yeah.
Invite
I believe so.
Participants.
Okay, yeah, and during this time, maybe we will find out something to fix this little issue. Yeah, okay, perfect. Okay, so all right, just give me a second to move around the agenda. Okay, now let's hear from Mike Preedy, I believe so, a Fair Impact partner and representative from DANCE, as he discusses Fair Impact's role in advancing fair assessment practices. I hope that I didn't jump over anyone. So
I think you're probably reasonably in the right order at the moment, so I'll go ahead. I'll talk about Fair Impact's contribution to fair assessment practices, and I'll try and keep it a little bit shorter so we can catch up a bit of time. Next slide, please. When expectations are formulated about the fairness of resources, what emerges is the desire to monitor and evaluate how can we make sure that fair digital objects are emerging and are being cared for in a fair ecosystem? This leads to the development of metrics and tools to operationalize and desires and expectations into things that can ideally be quantified and counted and tested. However, since the initiation of the FAIR principles, many different metrics and subsequently tools and frameworks have been derived from the principles. Each of these have slightly different aims, purposes, target audiences, execution types, and based on the context of their creation. Some may consider this to be a problem, but for others it could be important. What I will cover in the next 3 slides is the assessment and selection of fair enabling attributes, the assessment of digital objects beyond data, and how we can consider discipline-specific assessment metrics, trustworthiness in digital repositories, and how we are developing tools for fair understanding. Within Fair Impact, we are developing metrics and assessment methodologies for a broader range of digital objects. There was work done within the Research Data Alliance on FAIR for research software. However, this was not operationalized to form metrics that could be used in an assessment tool. Currently, we are building on the FAIR for RS work and Fair Impact on metadata developments for fair research software to develop assessment metrics. These metrics will be available at the end of this month for community feedback, but we will go further with testing these metrics both within a discipline and more generally in more general software repositories. Unfortunately, you haven't heard too much about our work in semantic artifacts, so this is a little bit out of context maybe, but we have recently published a semantic artifacts fair assessment methodologies, which divides the semantic artifacts into smaller parts to quantitatively assess semantic artifacts. We will be using tools such as FOOPS and OFAIR to assess the practicalities of this methodology in fair assessments. Next slide, please. We have been working with CESDA, which is a social science ERIC and one of our integrated partners. And we have been using fair implementation profiles from a number of CESDA service providers and infrastructure projects to develop a set of metrics specifically for the social sciences. And these are available for community review now. Although only a small number of the metrics vary from the generic metrics used by the Fuji automated assessment tool, this tool, the Fuji tool, has been updated to version 3 to allow users to select a different set of metrics. So we now can actually have a more generic or a specific set of metrics for a domain, and even possible for users to find new sets of metrics for themselves. The metrics will now be evaluated with a range of data objects from CESDA service providers. We want to know, how does the use of discipline-specific metrics alter the fair assessment? Are they inclusive? As not all social science data objects are the same. For example, there are quantitative and qualitative data objects and with different metadata standards in use. So our aim is to try and see and evaluate whether domain-specific metrics are useful. We will also go on further with other domains such as the earth sciences and molecular sciences. Also, Fuji will be used for assessing research software metrics, and this will also be done within the social sciences, and then for other software repositories, for example, software heritage. In the previous project, FAIR's Fair, the training, or rather, should we say, learning tool, FAIR Aware, was developed. We hope to develop this further to being more of a multilingual and add the possibility to include new sets of translations for the questions and support material on fair understanding, which also facilitate the opportunity of more disciplinary specific versions. Also, there will be inclusions of trainer support facilities, and we aim to make this software open source and possibility for institutions to install and use for their own purposes. Next slide, please. A key part of building a fair ecosystem of digital objects is to support trusted digital repositories, catalogs, and resources, and other metadata services. In creating an environment of trustworthiness, we need to have transparency in the information about repositories. For example, including the basic details of repositories, plus their policies and other information that should be made available, as well as their holdings, links to authoritative information about things like certification and fair assessments. And this should be made available both in machine and human accessible forms. This information would also be then used by registries, allowing users who may use their favorite registry to look for data objects to provide information to these in the way that that community may actually prefer. We are currently developing the first guidelines at the moment for repositories and registries on exposing repository trustworthiness status and fair data assessment outcomes. And this will be used in a pilot to test in the near future. I hope this has kept this short enough to deal with some of the technical problems we have. But I hope also that you'll see in a later presentation from Joy that there is a possibility to maybe get involved in some of our work in this sort of area. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mike. Thank you for a great presentation, and thank you for speeding up the whole thing. And to wrap up the formal presentation, we have Joy Davidson, as Mike mentioned, from the DCC, who will provide insights into the Fair Impact open calls.
Yeah, thanks very much, Marco. Welcome to everyone. We're delighted to have you all join us today. I'm just going to pick up a little bit as you heard about these open calls and give you a flavor of what we're offering. So as Ingrid mentioned at the beginning, I think it's worth reiterating here, Fair Impact is all about supporting you on your fair enabling journeys. We're trying to increase the uptake and use of fair tools and approaches, and really to try and make more organizations, researchers, and tools and services more fair enabling in their own right. So a big part of the work we're doing in Fair Impact is really trying to support people to make this happen. I won't go into too much detail here, since I think you heard a little bit about this from Ingrid. We have 3 distinct routes that we're calling it towards becoming more fair enabling. Route 1 is through dedicated guidance and one-to-one support. Route 2 is where you get a little bit of money to buy out some of your time. to let you play around with some of the tools and to start to implement them in a practical sense. And our third route to fair enabling is a series of public fair implementation workshops. The first of those is starting, and we'll talk a little bit about that in a few minutes. So if we can move on to the next slide, please. This is just a little bit of background. One of the key things underpinning the fair implementation support program is something we're calling the fair implementation framework. And what I really want to get across with this slide is that tools and methods are just one part of a bigger picture. A lot of what we're trying to do in the support program is to help people really think about why this matters. You know, a lot of organizations have lots of competing interests at the moment, not just FAIR and the European Open Science Cloud. We have lots of things competing for our attention. So we want to help you understand your drivers and to make perhaps better cases to spend time and effort on becoming more fair enabling. The next part of the puzzle is trying to figure out where you currently are in terms of your fair enabling capabilities. So we will help you to self-assess where you are and to then think about how you might want to improve. A key part of that will then be coming up with an action plan. So we expect people to really understand where they are now and to come up with some concrete things that they will do to become more fair enabling. And a key part of that is also to make sure that they're engaging with the right stakeholders. So we can have the best tools and infrastructure in the world, but if we're not raising awareness amongst the people who have to support them and to use them, they're kind of meaningless. So we do put a really good emphasis on making engagement a key part of the framework. Implementing tools and approaches is one part of it, and we have been doing a bit of work in the first year of the project to try and identify useful tools, primarily coming out of the first big chunk of European Commission funded work on the infra-EOSCA projects. So we've identified quite a few that we're taking forward, both within the project's pillar work packages, but also highlighting as potentially useful for others to use. The end of the framework is really to try and review your progress and to see, did your actions result in the changes that you wanted? And if not, why not? And to try and do some thinking around that. And the last step is really to share your experiences. I mean, we're all working our way through this together. We're learning as we go in many ways. So sharing those experiences can be really vital for helping others to avoid the pitfalls that you've encountered and to make sure that we're all learning from each other and making ourselves as fair enabling as possible. So if we can move on to the next slide, please. So that is the sort of underlying ethos for the support program. As Ingrid mentioned, the three support routes we have. Route 1 support is primarily targeting 3 different stakeholder groups. And as Ingrid mentioned as well, we are trying to focus on those people who work with researchers with our support program. We have come up with 3 different packages. One is aimed at research performing organizations, one is aimed at repository and data service providers, and a third program is aimed at those national level initiatives. What we will offer as part of the support is not money, but our time. So the people who are successful applicants to this route will get one-to-one support over a period of 9 months. During that time, they will take part in between 7 to 10 half-day virtual workshops. It depends on which program you're applying to join. But in between those virtual workshops, you will have the one-to-one support of a team of mentors from the Fair Impact team. And they will help you to carry out your self-assessments and to co-develop these action plans and engagement strategies. So you will benefit from a good amount of time from your Fair Impact mentors as you go through. A key emphasis, again, is for knowledge sharing between peers. So we have worked into the support programs ample opportunities for peers to share information with each other. So it's a fairly comprehensive bit of support that we're providing. And if we can move on to the next slide. That's great, thanks. I just wanted to flag up that we are currently accepting applications to the 3 support programs that I just mentioned. So if you see at the top of this screen, research performing organizations, repositories, and data service providers and national level initiatives, you can come to the website now and apply to join one of these things. It's probably worth noting that we will have a virtual clinic probably on the 18th of October, date to be determined, but we're looking at that date just now. And that will be a virtual session for people to drop in and hear a little bit more about the support programs and to ask any questions related to their applications. So we'll keep you posted on the date for that, and we would encourage all of you to think about applying. The deadline is November 1st, so we still have a bit of time, but hopefully if you have any questions, you can come to our virtual clinic and still be plenty of time for you to put in your applications. So if you can move on to the next slide, please. Great. The next route I just wanted to give you a brief overview on is Route 2 support. And this is aimed for people who may be a little bit more far advanced on their FAIR enabling journey. Route 1 support is really for helping those people who might just be getting started. Route 2 is to really give people the chance to play around with specific tools and approaches. We just finished the first open call launch, which opened on March 30th, 2023, and it's just starting now. And in that particular open call, we offered applicants the chance to join 2 support actions. One was trying, as you heard from Mike, to play around with some of these various FAIR assessment tools for either data sets or semantic artifacts. And these support actions are just getting started now. So we've got a cohort of 19 participants and some small teams who are working now to test these tools and to put them into practice. A key aim is for them to take the lessons learned from the fairness assessment scores that they receive and to start to think about how they can improve their service provision. The second support offer that is just underway now is working with something called signposting, FAIR signposting. And I think you've also heard from Walmart earlier on something called RO Crate. These 2 approaches are being used together to try and improve content and metadata discovery and consumption. So those are both underway now. We are just in the process of coming up with a set of new support offers for financial support, where you will get to use specific tools and approaches. These are being shaped over the autumn, and there will be an open call coming up at the end of January next year. So again, if you're interested, you can check the link on the slide. We keep everything up to date on the website, so as things change, you can look for information there. So if you can move on to the next slide, please. I just wanted to briefly cover the third route. So this is our most open route. We want to share as widely as we can anything that we think is an example of good practice, in particular with specific tools or approaches. So FAIR implementation workshops, these will be either 60 to 90-minute virtual sessions. And the key thing here is that they're free and open to all. So you just have to register to join. We have our first one coming up on the 11th of October between 9:30 and 11. So the registration's open now. And if you're interested, please do come along. We will have a speaker talking about work underway in Denmark to try and come up with national level support for FAIR. So this is the first in the series, but we are looking to run at least one per month between now and the end of the project. So please keep your eye up on the events page, and we'll post additional sessions as they're confirmed. So I think we can go on to the last slide now, or that might have been it. So I will just finish then by saying, please do consider applying for one of the support programs. We would love to have some of you join. And if you have any questions, you can get in touch with us. We have a help desk if you've got any queries or questions about the support actions. So thank you very much. And I'll hand over back to you, Marco.
Thank you, Joe, so much. And if anyone have any questions, feel free to write them directly in the Q&A section so we can open the discussion right away. Would anyone from the presenters would like to add anything, since there are no questions, or maybe the people are shy? Like, yeah, Joy, go ahead. Yeah.
Rookie mistake. Yeah, I did have a question for Milan, actually, when he was presenting and discussing the publication workflow that they had in place, and how a researcher might submit a data set or a publication, and it goes through various checks through different bodies in the organization, and then is published. And I just wondered if you can give us a sense of, the time involved with that. What is the turnaround that you would expect from deposit to publication? And if there's any kind of indication that you can give us as to the effort required to do that, because it could be quite difficult.
It's not problem, because it's not a lot of time, because researcher put his publication, for example, an article to the repository, and librarian checks metadata, and then a publication is published, is visible. But also on the other side, in agency of research, they have also evaluation of this publication about typology, and about, for example, in our case, we have also impact factors, and according to impact factors, they also give points to the publication. But publication is published when a librarian publish in the repository, and also librarian also send metadata to our bibliographic catalog, which is used for this central body for domain-specific areas for evaluate publications. But for data sets, we work on pilots because we need independent body inside organization, because for evaluation of quality of data, we need experts from the field, and also they need to check all documents, for example, informed consents for participants, also ethical approval if you work with people, also some agreements with, for example, companies, if you use some company data, and also licenses, provenness of data, documentation about data sets, formats of a data set, and also librarians need to check metadata. Also, there is some domain-specific metadata which is deposited in their own domain-specific format. So in this area, we have pilots, but we haven't enough legislation on the level of institution, and also on the level of our agency of research.
Yeah, thank you very much. I mean, as the pilots progress, it would be great maybe to have you back and to share a little bit about how it's going, because it's something we always hear about, is how do you assess the quality, and how do you make sure you're getting that kind of balance between generic and discipline specific. So thank you very much.
Maybe another thing is also important. We give to every digital object PID, and also we give PID to files. If our depositors want that they will give that we will give them. Also, our repository infrastructure have possibilities to give also PIDs to files, but there is huge amount of PIDs for big data archive, for example, for one data set, big data set. So for this files, it's not necessary to have PIDs.
Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you to both of you, Joy and Milan, and Wolmar, and then Mike. Go ahead, please.
All right. So this question comes from based on the presentation that Joy gave about the support actions offered by Fair Impact, and I think it's a great opportunity for people to that have activities that have already been planned, or that they've had a plan to do something, and then this is really the way to kind of push forward and get that going. But I mean, I think there's also this hurdle of freeing resources locally and making sure that, I mean, you feel that this is the priority you should focus on. And then, I mean, to all the people in the panel, what examples of incentives and support from the, I mean, either national level or the institutional level do these activities receive to really capitalize on the support that you provide in the Fair Impact project?
Well, from my perspective, I think, as I mentioned, one of the things we're really hoping to try and give people in the first session we have for the support program for RPOs, data service providers, and national level initiatives is that kind of tips on how to make the case. Because as I said, we live and breathe FAIR data and the European Open Science Cloud, but for many people, it's just one other thing they have to think about. So other things to help make the case are research integrity. That's always a very big driver for most research performing organizations. Research assessment is also another thing they have to worry about, but also things like getting research grant income. And as you know, different funders change their policies and have greater expectations for ensuring that grantees produce FAIR data and share it. I think we're looking to try and give people a broader set of tools for making that case. I think in many ways, what we're trying to do as well with the support program is to help people to just kind of take those first steps. As I mentioned, it's not always about taking a tool and implementing it. In many ways, it's about trying to get people around your organization on the same page. So a lot of what we'll be trying to do is get those conversations started with different actors, because when we talk to people, quite often there's a lot of good stuff happening already. It's just not very joined up. And I think that is something we'll be focusing on. So I think that's a quick answer for the Route 1 support. Route 2 support is definitely for those people who maybe know more specifically a particular area that they want to focus on. So they might know that they want to check the fairness of the data that they hold within their repository, or they might have semantic artifacts, for example, that they want to look at. And our funding there really, as you said, just gives them maybe the kind of chance to say, I've got a couple of days worth of my time bought out to just sit and focus on this, whereas it can be difficult to do that with the day job piling up. So those are the ways that we're really trying to kind of help different levels of maturity get started and to engage with FAIR.
Thanks. Mike, Josephine?
I was going to say that Sophie might be available now, but we're coming close to the end. I was just going to follow also up on what Joy's been mentioning about the supports things. One thing that we've been discovering is that it's quite surprisingly poor some institutions or some repositories have with their what they're actually providing in terms of their data sets, in terms of the information that we need to assess the fairness of them. So tools like Fuji and others are finding it somewhat difficult. So there is still quite a lot of work that institutions may have to make just to try and get a little bit better, a little bit more usable, trying to improve their fairness levels as such, because it's not even out there. It's not the same level playing field. There's a lot of differences between the different providers, their different metadata, what is happening out there. So I think what we can do and help is try and bring those who are a little further behind up to the level that those who are perhaps doing a very good job at the moment. So there is opportunities there to help quite a few.
I believe that we all can agree on that. Josephine, you have raised hand.
Yes, so I have a question for also for Milan, if you don't mind. You mentioned quite many different persistent identifier systems. And as I mentioned in my presentation, we are keen on looking into emerging PIDs. So you mentioned Connor ID, ARRS, COBIS ID. So what I was wondering is whether these are completely a product of national development, or is it part of a broader sort of multinational collaboration? And how well are these being used and received?
We have more PIDs for a person. Yes, one national identifiers, for example, for our agency of research, from our catalog system. But what is important? Important is that you have normalization of authors, for example. And if it's possible, we also use authors ORCID. And also we have, so for the same is for affiliations. We use this ROR and GRID also for normalization, but we have our own identification of affiliation, also one for catalog system and another for our current research information system. This is a problem, but I think the same problems are on other countries, but they have much more critical problems because they haven't a centralized databases of, for example, institutions. But also we want to establish this PID for instruments, and also there is some domain-specific IDs which is used, for example, for data sets in biomedical science, or, for example, IGSN for samples in earth science, etc. So we enable to add into our metadata set all identifiers which we know. If we don't know some identifiers, we then, and users know these identifiers, then they send these IDs to our librarians, and we have our own vocabulary of these identifiers, and we insert this into the system. Also, we have some identifiers for our learning management systems. Also, they have their own identifiers, and the same is, for example, in GitHub, you have GitHub identifier, for example, etc. So, but important is that you have identifier which is possible to resolve.
Yeah, thank you for that. Yeah, it can be a pretty scattered landscape. So really good that you have paid some attention to.
We will need work also on strategy about identifiers, persistent identifiers. In Slovenia, we haven't this kind of strategies like, for example, in England or in Australia. But we wish to do this strategy in next 1 or 2 years, I hope. Maybe another thing is because I missed some three slides, because for these 3 slides I needed, for example, 5 or maybe more minutes. Important thing is also we wish to, how I say, also enrich our minimum metadata sets to the level that we will have this, how I say, which is important for fair digital objects. And this is on the last slide. I have proposed this minimum metadata sets. We haven't all this metadata in repositories, but I think in 1 year we will have this for general metadata, how I say, for general metadata, not for specific domain specific metadata. This depends on the specific domain. I think Marco have one question. Irena, I give this question to you.
Yeah, I saw the question. So the question was how will Arnes approach to address fairness, and I already respond. So we are working everything in a way that it's in touch with the community, and as some of you know, so we are working on maintaining 2 big data centers. And as I already mentioned, we are trying to cover every need of the research community, which means from fiber optics to supercomputer clusters on the one hand, services on the other hand, and we are always here to give any kind of technical support to research organizations, which are, and I don't know, this would be kind of a summary of all the things that we can provide. And I believe that we would need another hour to give a detailed approach of everything that we already try to build or to address related to the open science. So yeah, there is a lot of things that are going on, and I believe that we run out of time to address them properly. All right, so I believe that that it's kind of a time to conclude the whole thing. So as we conclude this insight, in this journey through the landscape of open science and FAIR, University of Maribor, Slovenian Open Science Community, and Arnes want to extend our gratitude to all of our speakers, participants, and partners for making this FAIR Impact Roadshow a success. The discussion at the end and presentations before have provided us with valuable insights into the state of open science practices in Slovenia and into the great work of FAIR Impact partners, as we gained a deeper understanding of the crucial role of FAIR policies, interoperability, and metadata, which will shape our research landscape in future. Thank you once again for joining us today, and we look forward to our continued journey towards a fair and open future in science. As we learned today, we are all EOSCs. So thanks again, and have a great day.
Goodbye.
Bye-bye.